This is my solution to day 11 of Advent of Code. The problem they gave us was that we needed to use the int code program that we already made in previous days to create a robot that could move around our ship and paint the panels of the ship. The new part of this problem was that the robot would scan the panel it was on and tell us the current color. So it would tell us 0 or 1 depending on whether it was black or white, and that would act as our input. And then the int code would output two outputs. The first one would tell us what color to paint that panel, so again using 0 or 1, and then the second output which would tell us in which direction the robot should turn and then move forward 1. So if it outputted 0, it would then turn left 90 degrees and move forward 1. If it outputted 1, it would turn right. The inputs for this problem I've just copied and pasted into this cell here, and the first part of my code will actually just prepare the spreadsheet. So I'll run that, and what that's done is it's put my opcode. Each instruction and parameter is on a row of its own, and I have a few cells here which will keep track of what's going on. So this will be our input. The input will come from the panel, so it's going to be 0 or 1 depending on whether we're on a black or white panel. And then the outputs, I have it so that it will output the first one here, the second one here, third, fourth, fifth, and so on, just so then I've got an audit trail of all the outputs. Some of the instructions take parameters, so this just keeps track of the parameters that we're currently using. And the pointer, if I update that, you will see it just points to which row, which part of the instructions we are on. And the base is used in what has been defined as relative mode, so it's used as an offset when we are trying to look at fields within our memory. So this column here is our live memory, and this column here is just a copy of the original, just so I can compare it if I need to debug. The second sheet of my spreadsheet, called ship, is going to represent the panels on the ship. We don't know how large an area is going to paint, so I've just guessed with this could be a good starting point. I've gone for row 1000, column 1000, and we'll see if it works. I've actually decided to paint with 1s and 2s instead of 0s and 1s. That's just because a blank cell acts as a 0, and I want to be able to differentiate between the ones that have been painted and the ones that haven't. So the first part of the program actually just asks us to run the code with a completely black spaceship to start with, and to count how many panels are painted at least once. So what my code will do is it's going to keep running through the input, the opcode, until this boolean halted is changed to true, and you'll see where that happens in a moment. What it will do each time it runs through the code is it will find a new input, and RNG here is acting as the position of the ship, which, as you can see, I've started at ALL 1000, that's the 1000th row and 1000th column, and it does the range mod 2, and that will return a 0 or a 1 depending on whether it is blank or painted. It then calls this bit of code here, run code, and this is essentially taking the instruction, and it will find the parameters and output whatever it needs to output. So if I scroll down, you can see here op is my instruction, and if it equals 1, it will do the addition. If it equals 2, it will do multiplication. 3 will store the input. 4 will output the result, and at that point I change this boolean given out to be true. 5 and 6 does the jump if statements. 7 and 8 does a less than or equals to comparison. 9 changes the base that we're using for relative mode, and 99 will halt. So if we reach 99, then halted equals true, and that will stop this loop. Here I've got the given out boolean, so that is currently false. As you saw a moment ago, if we have an output given, that gets changed to true, and therefore it will do what needs to be done at that point. So the first output it will paint. So if the output is 0, it will paint it black, and I'm using 2. Otherwise it will paint it white, and I'm using 1. If it's the second output, it will update the robot's position, and I've got a little function macro that does that. So it basically says if my direction is up, then and the output is 0, then I need to turn left and move forward 1, and I change my direction to L, standing for left. And so this sub essentially takes the direction in which the robot needs to turn. 0 is turn left, 1 is turn right, and it checks the current direction and applies the rotation to it and updates it to the new direction and position. I appreciate that was a very brief explanation of what my code does, and I didn't go into much detail, but there's just a bit too much of it to cover in a short video like this. So if you do want a copy of it and want to look at it in more detail, then please drop me an email and I'm happy to send you a copy of the spreadsheet. But for now, I'm just going to run the code from where we stopped earlier. So it's already set the spreadsheet up for us, and now it's just going to run through each instruction in the opcode and apply the relevant instructions and outputs. So let me take that breakpoint off and run it. It does take a little while because it's working through quite a lot of instructions, but it will come back after a little bit of thinking. There you go, it's run through, and what we have is all of our outputs are now listed. You can see they're all zeros and ones, which makes sense. And if we go to the ship, we have a lot of panels have been painted. So anything that has a number in has been painted. So now I can just do a simple count of that area, and that will give us how many panels have been painted at least once. And that's my answer there. Part 2 of the problem was actually very, very similar to part 1, with the only change being that we are going to start on a white panel. The rest will still be black, so all I had to do was, in the setup, I just made the first range, the first position of the ship to equal 1, which is white. And then from there, we run the code exactly the same, but this time it will output an image or a string of characters, which is our registration number, which is the solution to our problem. So now I can just run the code as before. And it ran a lot quicker, and I think that's because there's just a lot fewer instructions for this one. And again, we've got our outputs listed, and this time our ship has been painted this way. And if I just apply some conditional formatting to that, let's do something Christmassy, green and red. There we go, you can see the answer to the problem. And that's the end of day 11's problem. Like I said before, if you want to copy this spreadsheet, let me know. I will be sharing a couple of other days throughout the advent of Code 2019. If you haven't checked it out yet, please do. It's really good fun, and I will leave the link in the description. Thanks for watching.